December 25, 2002. While most of America was unwrapping pajamas and toy sets, a 55-year-old man in West Virginia was staring at a piece of paper that felt like it was glowing. That man was Andrew Jackson Whittaker Jr., but the world would soon know him simply as Jack. Jack had just won the Powerball jackpot. The amount? $315 million. To give you some perspective, at that time, it was the largest undivided jackpot ever won in the history of the lottery. Now close your eyes for a second. Imagine that kind of money hitting your bank account tomorrow morning. You'd think all your worries would vanish, right? You'd think you were finally safe. But for Jack Whittaker, that ticket wasn't a gift. It was a Trojan horse. You see, Jack wasn't some broke guy living paycheck to paycheck. He was already a self-made millionaire running a successful construction firm. He was smart, he was tough, and he was experienced. He thought he could handle it. He thought he was prepared for the storm. But within just a few short years, the money wouldn't just be gone. It would take his family, his reputation, and his soul along with it. Tonight, we're peeling back the glitter and the gold to see the devastating reality of the Lotto curse. Why did a man who had everything end up wishing he had just torn that ticket into pieces? Let's look at the dark math behind the $315 million downfall. When Jack Whittaker walked into the lottery headquarters to claim his prize, he wasn't alone. He was surrounded by cameras, reporters, and the blinding flash of 1,000 light bulbs. He stood there, wearing his signature black cowboy hat, holding a check that looked like a gateway to a new universe. After taxes, Jack opted for the lump sum, a cool $113 million in cold, hard cash. Now let's look at how he started. At first, Jack was the hero West Virginia wanted him to be. He didn't just buy a mansion and hide away. No, Jack was generous, perhaps to a fault. He immediately gave 10% of his winnings to his church. He donated millions to establish a foundation to provide food and clothing to low-income families in his rural community. He even bought the woman who sold him the winning ticket a brand new house and a new Jeep, and gave her a $44,000 cash gift. On the surface, it looked like the money had fallen into the right hands. But behind the scenes, the foundation of Jack's life was already beginning to crack. Instead of hiring a top-tier wealth management firm to insulate him from the public, Jack became his own publicist. He started carrying a black suitcase everywhere he went. Inside that suitcase, anywhere from $200,000 to $500,000 in cash. Think about that for a moment. In the world of asset protection, the first rule is, don't be a target. But Jack did the opposite. He drove a shiny, custom-painted Lamborghini to local strip clubs and bars in one of the poorest areas of the country. He would walk into a room and literally buy drinks for every single person in the building. He wasn't just spending money, he was broadcasting his vulnerability to every predator in the state. Jack thought his toughness and his business experience would protect him. He thought that because he had made millions in construction, he could handle hundreds of millions in cash. But there's a massive difference between net worth and liquidity. As Jack would soon find out, when you have that much cash moving in the open, you aren't a businessman anymore. You're prey. And the predators were already closing in. They say money doesn't change you, it just magnifies who you already are. But for Jack Whittaker, money didn't just magnify his life, it set it on fire. The first real crack in the armor happened at a place called the Pink Onion Strip Club. Jack was a regular there, often flashing his massive rolls of cash. One night, while Jack was inside, thieves broke into his car. They didn't just steal a radio, they took a suitcase containing $545,000 in cash. Why was he carrying $500,000 in a car? Nobody knows. But the most shocking part? When the police asked him why he had that much cash, Jack didn't seem to care. He simply said, "Because I can." But the universe was about to show him that even $300 million has a limit. Soon after, he was robbed again. This time, another $200,000 was taken from his vehicle. It was as if Jack had a target painted on his back that only criminals could see. But the robberies were nothing compared to the legal nightmare that followed. Jack was hit with a tidal wave of lawsuits. At one point, he was involved in 400 different legal battles. Everyone wanted a piece of the Whittaker pie, from people claiming they slipped on his floor to strange women accusing him of things that never happened. Jack was spending millions just on legal fees. His construction company, the business he spent his life building, began to crumble because he was too busy in courtrooms to run it. However, the true tragedy of the Jack Whittaker story isn't found in a bank statement. It's found in the cemetery. Jack had a granddaughter named Brandi Bragg. She was the light of his life. He wanted to give her everything he never had. So he gave her a massive weekly allowance, over $2,000 a week, and several cars before she was even 20. In the small poor towns of West Virginia, a teenager with that much cash is a magnet for the wrong crowd. Brandi fell deep into the world of drug addiction. Jack tried to help her. He tried to buy her safety, but you cannot outbid a drug habit with a lottery check. In December 2004, exactly 2 years after the big win, Brandi went missing. A few weeks later, her body was found wrapped in a plastic tarp, discarded behind a scrapyard. The cause of death was an overdose. Jack was devastated. He was a man who could buy anything, but he couldn't buy his granddaughter's life back. Not long after, his own daughter, Ginger, Brandi's mother, also passed away. Jack sat in his mansion, surrounded by expensive things, but the house was empty. The people he loved were gone. The hero of West Virginia was now a broken man, haunted by the very day he won. He famously told the press, "I wish I'd torn that ticket up." The Lotto curse wasn't just a headline anymore. For Jack, it was his new reality. And the worst part? The money was running out. Now we have to ask the multi-million-dollar question, how? How does a man with a $113 million cash windfall lose it all in less than 5 years? To the average person, that much money seems impossible to spend. But in the world of high-stakes finance, Jack Whittaker committed every cardinal sin in the book. Let's perform a financial autopsy on the death of a fortune. First, the lack of an internal filter. Jack made the mistake of being his own gatekeeper. When you win the lottery in America, you become a target for predatory litigation. Jack was sued 400 times. Why? Because people knew he would rather settle for $50,000 than spend $100,000 on legal fees. In professional wealth management, you don't own assets in your own name. You use anonymous trusts and limited liability companies, LLCs. If Jack's wealth had been shielded behind a legal wall, 90% of those lawsuits would have never even reached his front door. Second, misunderstanding burn rate versus net worth. Jack was spending his principal, the actual prize money, instead of living off the interest. If Jack had simply invested that $113 million into a diversified portfolio or a low-risk index fund with a modest 5% annual return, he would have had over $5 million to spend every single year without ever touching his initial $113 million. But Jack didn't want $5 million a year. He wanted it all, and he wanted it now. This is a phenomenon economists call lifestyle creep on steroids. Third, the liquidity trap. By carrying hundreds of thousands in cash, Jack bypassed the security of the banking system. He became his own vault, but he had no guards. From a tax strategy perspective, he was also bleeding out. Without proper tax shelters or charitable lead trusts, a massive portion of his wealth was likely eroded by avoidable tax penalties and poor accounting. And finally, the most important lesson, the power of no. Jack wanted to be the savior of his town, but as any financial advisor will tell you, if you cannot say no to your friends, your family, and your ego, you cannot keep your wealth. Jack was a man who built skyscrapers out of steel and concrete, but he built his financial future on sand. By 2007, just 5 years after that Christmas miracle, Jack Whittaker was forced to admit in court that he was broke. The $315 million dream was officially dead. In the end, Jack Whittaker's story didn't end with a bang, but with a weary sigh. He spent his final years haunted by what could have been. In 2016, his house, one of the few things he had left, burned to the ground. It was uninsured, another disaster in a long line of tragedies. Jack passed away in 2020 at the age of 72. He didn't leave behind a multi-million-dollar empire or a sprawling legacy. Instead, He left behind a cautionary tale that is studied by financial advisors and lottery officials all over the world. The Lotto curse is a catchy headline, but the truth is much more grounded. Jack wasn't cursed by magic. He was overwhelmed by a reality he wasn't prepared for. He once said, "I'm only going to be remembered as the lunatic who won the lottery." But maybe we can remember him for something else. A reminder that money is simply an amplifier. If you are generous, money makes you a philanthropist. If you are reckless, money makes you a disaster. If you won $300 million tomorrow, what would be the first thing you'd do? Would you go into hiding? Would you hire a legal team? Or would you, like Jack, think you're strong enough to handle it all on your own? Let me know your plan in the comments below. I'm curious to see who has a strategy and who has a dream. The American dream is built on the idea that more is always better. But as Jack Whittaker showed us, more without a plan is just a faster way to hit the bottom. If you found Jack's story as fascinating as we did, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And if you want to master the world of money and learn from the mistakes of those who came before you, subscribe and turn on notifications. You don't want to miss our next deep dive. Thank you for watching, and remember, wealth isn't about what you make, it's about what you keep.